A Message to Scott Cafton Reimagined, Chapter 8. This is mini golf, not full-on golf. Don't whack the ball, just tap it. Don't get in another person's way. Don't aim for water features, as we are not getting the balls out for you. And please, don't slam the putters on the ground. The staff member looked at the group. You got that? They all nodded, eager to get the game started. Well, I wish you luck. Enjoy your golfing. The group hurried off to the first hole and began the game. It was a relatively simple layout. The area was in the shape of a backwards and upside down L, with a tree stump where the line changed direction, and the flag and hole at the end of the L. Luis was first up, and putted his red ball relatively well to the first hole by knocking it off of the stump, Baz recording him. The pink-haired man swapped places with his younger friend as he went next with his pink ball and got it slightly closer than Luis. Will was third, and his green ball accidentally hit Luis one closer. Ryan tried a different tactic and tried to get the ball to go around the tree stump and hit off the wall, but his ball ended up the furthest away. He made it seem like that was precisely what he meant to do, and Luis and Will laughed. Reese was up last, and after a brief period of stretching and waving the putter around like a professional golfer would, he hit his purple ball in the same way Ryan did, but a little softer. He ended up being furthest away from the hole. Once they had all putted their first hole, they carried on to the next. They got more complicated as you went around with added bridges, tunnels, and tubes you could use for shortcuts. More obstacles were added, and there were tighter corners you had to go around, which wasted your turns. They joked and laughed as they went around the course, messing around with the camera and getting some disapproving looks from other visitors. There was a statue that released steam, which the pink-haired man stood in front of, trying to look powerful. He did, until he inhaled the fumes and started coughing. Another area had a tunnel that you were meant to crawl through. By you, it meant children, but that didn't stop Luis and Will clambering through. After all, age is just a number, right? They tried to chase each other through, but Luis was much more sensible and crawled, while Will tried to shuffle his way through. "Get me out of here, lad," the musician said in a weird made-up accent. Luis turned around to see his purple-haired friend on his back, with his legs scraping against the roof of the tunnel. "I'm stuck!" he called out, waving his putter around the small space. He clearly wasn't, but Luis burst out laughing. Reese went from being really bad to being really good to failing again. Luis had a massive comeback at the end, while everyone else stayed relatively steady through. The game ended with Reese last, with 106, Will fourth, 103, Baz third, 102, Ryan second, 101, and Luis first, 95.
Okay guys.
Luis started, pointing the camera towards the bonus shot. There was a stretch of open rectangular-shaped putting area with a red line that set off a siren if you stood on it. At the end of the stretch was a sort of hut-type thing which the golf ball would be hit into. Inside of it were rings of targets, like a bullseye for archery, but for golf. It served as a way to make sure people returned the golf balls, but it also had an objective for the golfers. The aim was simple. Put the ball into the center red ring and you will get another round of golf for free.
If Ryan can putt this in the red slot, we get a free game of golf.
And waste another few hours! Will called out from behind with a grin, looking at his phone. 12 past 1. Everyone else had attempted and failed to get the ball in the red circle, so it was resting on Ryan now. He shuffled around, picking out the best stance and eyed up an invisible line between the ball and the red circle. He took a few deep breaths and mentally worked out the power needed to get the ball up the small incline inside of the hut. He brought back his putter and held his breath. 3, 2, 1, and he missed. There was some signs of disappointment, mainly from Ryan himself, and the group began to head over to the place where you give the putters back. Luis turned off the camera and looked up at the sky.
Does it look like it's going to rain?
He asked, dubiously watching the grey clouds form above the theme park. The forecast this morning said it was going to be torrential for an hour at some point. Baz replied, giving the sky a quick glance.
What are we doing for lunch?
Reese asked the group. People talked for a moment, going through the options. There were the park's many cafes and food stands which they could go to, along with restaurants that were sure to serve lunch as well. No one said it aloud, but no one really wanted to go for lunch after being outside for so long. The youngest group member could only think about how he would throw up if he had anything else today. Isn't there like a shop on site? Ryan asked Will. Thoughts clicked into place inside the musician's head. Yeah, they have grab and go stuff like you get in normal stores too. Is that what we feel like having? I'm pretty sure I can remember roughly where it is. Yeah, sure. The group agreed. We don't all need to go. If you guys tell me what you want, I'll get it and come back to the cabin.
No, I'll come with. It's fine.
The Scotsman told the purple-haired man. Everyone else gave their versions of the same response. Will laughed and shook his head. There's really no need, especially if it's going to rain. Why would we all want to be outside? The arguments went back and forth for a few minutes until Will was victorious.
Would you mind if I still came though?
Louis asked quietly.
I just don't know what I feel like having.
Everyone understood precisely what that meant. The musician gave his younger friend a questioning gaze before nodding. He asked everyone what they wanted before saying their goodbyes. We'll be as quick as possible, guys.
See you two soon then.
Reese said, Baz and Ryan chasing him. Ryan looked at Louis and gave him a sympathetic smile before beginning the trek back to the cabin. Will looked at his youngest friend and nodded before leading the way to where he thought the shop was. There was little talk between the two on the way there. The purple-haired man kept giving Louis quick looks with the intention of starting a conversation, but will always stop himself, afraid he might say the wrong thing to his friend. He really wanted to ask how he was doing and what the hell happened yesterday, but he just couldn't find the words. The sky darkened as they made their way around the park and the musky smell of an approaching storm filled their nostrils. Many people around them panicked as they feared that their day would be ruined by it. Well, it wouldn't make much of a difference if you went on the water rides. Will thought as he watched the rushing crowds around him. The shop was not where he thought it was, but it was close by. Before long, the pair stepped through automatic glass doors into a relatively empty and a relatively small store. The type you would find at the side of a petrol station. The floors were so shiny you could see your own reflection in them, and the white lights made the room sparkle. The shelves had been recently stacked and each one was clearly labeled. A young female shopkeeper stood behind the counter, going about her duties as if the procedure had been drilled into her. Will grabbed a basket and he and Louis made their way over to the fridges where the sandwiches were kept. He pulled up a list on his phone and checked what everyone had wanted while his younger friend looked around at the crisps and snack bars. Reese, chicken and bacon, chili crisps, lemonade. Ryan, BLT, breakfast bar, Pepsi. Baz, egg mayonnaise, salted crisps, Coke. He placed each item carefully in the basket and then contemplated what he wanted. Louis came to his side and dropped a packet of Walker's ready salted crisps onto the rest of the sandwiches and snacks. Will didn't question it when Louis got nothing else. He grabbed himself a DAG wrap and whatever packet of crisps was closest to him, along with a Monster Energy drink, even though he knew they didn't really agree with his stomach anymore. Louis handed him some cash so that they could split the cost. The musician wanted to pay himself, but Louis wanted to make up for yesterday after Will paid for his part of the dinner. He shoved the money into Will's pocket and waited by the door. Will groaned in annoyance, but the cashier was waiting, so he paid and joined his friend at the door. Louis was staring out of the windows, which were now covered in water droplets. They exchanged an irritated glance before they both stepped outside. The automatic doors opened and let the sound of the storm flood in, the water crashing into puddles and battering the benches. The last few people outside were either running, screeching, or both. The rides were hanging up signs that they were closed due to the weather conditions. No shit, Sherlock, Will muttered as he hurried past one. Britain can go from sun to rain in a matter of seconds, so enjoy it while it lasts. At one point, they had contemplated going back to the shop for umbrella. The rain was pouring down in thick and heavy drops, drenching everything it touched. It was that weird rain that was cold but made the air muggy and hard to breathe. The walk that would have taken the pair half an hour was almost run in half of that time. The musician pounded on the door with Louis close behind him, hugging himself to keep warm and protect his camera. Will was hunching over the bag of food to stop it from getting wet. Bess answered the door quickly and the pair rushed inside. The door was shut and the sound of the storm was muted, but a low hum could still be heard. Will's hoodie was dripping and the water had soaked through his shirt and stuck to his skin. Louis didn't have a hoodie, so he was completely drenched. He was shivering. Will placed the bag on the counter and instantly went upstairs to get a dry top on. His jeans were okay considering the rain outside. It was more his bag that was wet from hunching over. Louis kicked off his shoes and followed Will up the stairs and went into his room, clearly having the same idea. Will came back out with his purple Twitch sponsor shirt and his purple jacket which had silver swirls around the sleeves. Louis came back with a white hoodie on. He was still shivering though. They came back down together and everyone grabbed their sandwiches while listening to Will's complaints about the weather. Louis nibbled at the edge of one of his crisps. Reese and Ryan explained how there was a power cut at the cabin when they got back. They talked about the golf and congratulated Louis on his win. He smiled but seemed a little preoccupied. It was around 20 to 2 once they had finished. Bess got up to make hot drinks for everybody. Ryan shot him an accusing look before remembering that he didn't know how many coffees their younger friend had had today. And he told Louis that he wouldn't tell anyone until he was ready. He would come to regret that very soon.
Are you still cold?
The Scotsman asked Louis, noticing that his hands were still shaking. In fact, his whole body was shaking. The younger man had his eyes clenched shut and was grimacing as if he was in pain. When they opened again, Ryan instantly recognized that glazed look over them. "Louis?" he asked, panicked. His younger friend looked at him. His face was a mix between pleading and defeat, but his eyes were empty. A tear fell down Louis' face,